Firstly, life. What do we mean by life? Do we mean by all life, bacteria, viruses? We can make viruses, we can make life in that case, and prions, which are just protein but act as though they're living. I guess you mean human life, really, don't we? And do we mean the difference between a living person and a dead person, that sort of life, the living force? Or is it the potential for life, you know, a baby or a fertilized egg? No, I mean, I think we all agree that meaning is in the context of human life. What happens during a human life? Okay, that's the life. What about meaning? You've got to be careful we don't talk about the meaning of meaning, otherwise it gets a bit complicated. We use the word meaning in different ways. Now, in this particular context, we may refer to the purpose of life, meaning as purpose. But then, of course, that begs the question as purpose in whose mind? I mean, those with religious faith have no problem with that one. But those of us steeped in post-Enlightenment rationalism, who see life in the context of new synthesis evolution, we appreciate that biology occurs without any sense of purpose, only due to chance and necessity and the vagaries of natural selection and capricious evolution. Or maybe we refer to the significance of life, but then significance to whom? These are complicated questions. I'll tell you my take on the meaning of life, and this is, I think, a similar take to most humanists. Sometimes when I'm with a family, talking to them about the funeral service, the person I'm about to conduct, and I ask them, and they say, well, Dad was a shopkeeper, and then when he retired, he played a lot of golf. He was captain of the golf club. I don't want to know. Well, I do want to know that, but I want to know more. I want to know what was important to him, what in his life, you know, he looked back and was proud of, what in his life had value and meaning. So maybe that's the big question. Not the meaning of life, but the meaning of a life, the meaning of the particular life of the person whose funeral I was doing, the meaning of any life. What is the meaning of your life and mine? This makes me think of an old film. I hope you've all seen it. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. Do you remember that? It stars James Stewart standing on a bridge about to commit suicide because he feels that his life is without value and meaning and that his family, his world would be better off if he jumped. But he doesn't. He's talked out of it by an angel called Clarence. Do you remember? A trainee angel called Clarence, who talks to him and persuades him that his life, just an ordinary, provincial, mid-American life, was a good life, a life that did have meaning and value, that life affected the lives of others. And he also shows him through flashbacks what would have happened if he had never existed. Now, I think it's an uplifting film because it says something important to all of us, that we each make our own meaning and value in life. Sure, what you do is important, but it's the way you do it that gives your life meaning. The film also has what you might call a deflationary message, because it's saying that life's meaning can be understood by anybody. You don't have to be a priest or a philosopher to understand the meaning of life. So, for whatever reason, approaching death maybe, you ask yourself, what's it all about? You can look around and see for yourself the many ways that life can be meaningful. You can see the value in happiness without believing it's everything, for there'll be times when happiness may be hard to find. You can appreciate the pleasures of life without being a slave to your desires. You can see the value of success, but understanding that it's striving to achieve that's more important than fame. You can appreciate the value in helping others to also lead meaningful lives without fear that others will demand more than you can give. And finally, you can recognize that it's, call it what you like, heartfelt compassion, love, Christian agape, that leaves us to lead lives of meaning and value, love and respect for the fragile world we live in, love and compassion for our fellow men and women. So let's think about the meaning and value of our life now. Let's not wait till imminent death makes us wonder. We should ask ourselves the big question about life while we're living it. I told you it would be short. What's the meaning of life to you?
Well, Paul's already answered this, hasn't he, in the chat? And is that your answer, Paul?
Yeah, to some extent. What I was going to say, though, was that for me, increasingly, I'm feeling that the meaning of life comes in relationships. In that, I've been influenced by a couple of writers. One is Gregory Bateson, and the other one is a Franciscan called Richard Raw. Some of you may be familiar with. And really that sense that our meaning comes not from what we are in ourselves, but what we are in relationship to others, including for the Christian to God. Raw talks about the Trinity as a set of relationships, rather than, he said, focus on the relationships rather than the individual parts of the Godhead. And I think to try to understand life's meaning without thinking of it in terms of relationships, I think misses out a lot.
We've just been through a year of lockdown where many people's relationships have been very much impoverished. So does that mean the meaning of their lives has been impoverished?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to this, but I darkly suspect that a lot of people have suffered serious mental health crises because they've not been relating to others. And whether there's a relationship between what I'm saying and that, I'm not sure. But I think people's own feeling about their meaning probably is diminished and impoverished through lack of being able to be in relationship with others.
Mm.
At which point I'm shutting up.
I found myself using a term that's caused me to reflect with my daughter, who we're very close, but because she's in Norwich, we've not been able to be together because you can't do the journey in one day and you can't stay overnight and you've not been able to leave area. And we were in tier 4. And so it's gone on for months and months. And I haven't seen her since July of last year. And I always would see her every 4 or 6 weeks. But, me and millions of others who are struggling with this. But I just found myself saying to her in a sort of joking way, in a message, gosh, I feel like, how did I put it? Something like I'm being deprived of oxygen. It's that sense of being deprived of oxygen, the oxygen of life, which is hugging and caring for people, being able to put your arms around somebody. Jane, I would love to have been able to have reached out and given you a big hug today if we'd been at Neil's with our packed sandwiches, It's that's so hard, isn't it, about the last 12 months, that deprivation of touch and contact that I think has had a huge impact on everybody. Thank heavens for the vaccine, and let's look forward to things changing it might not all come right way up, but if it just gets a little better so we can at least hug people again, that would be nice. Oxygen. Interesting. I was thinking, because, you know, with the pandemic, it's lack of oxygen that has cost people their lives. Yeah.
Like Dorothy L. says, Lord Peter Wimsey, quote, "I have not the philosophy," unquote, and I do not think about big questions like that. But I do remember what my father's view was. He believed it was a question. The meaning, what Simon would prefer to think of as the purpose of life, is the impact on others, and he took comfort from the fact that a good impact survives you.
Mm.
Meaning has a big thing for me. I haven't said much. I've been listening, doing lots of listening, but actually how I make my meaning in my life is hugely important to me. And I have a mantra by which I kind of live by, and it's something that I've kind of given a lot of thought to, and the words about it. But basically, you know, I strive to ease the suffering of all living beings, you know, and in doing so to let in love, laughter and gratitude, and to walk lightly and with care upon this earth. And I'm not a religious person. I would say I am a spiritual person, but I live by that mantra, really, that I do as little harm and I do as much good as I possibly can. And I don't feel I need religion to do that. Yeah.
And that sounds like a very strong statement of meaning. And again, it's meaning entirely in relationship with other creatures or entities.
Yeah, whatever they are. Yeah.
The words you used were lovely. Were they your words?
Yes.
I'd like you just write down what you said and put it in chat or something, because it was just lovely. Treading, I mean, there were so many images there that just sounded lovely. So I'd love to see what you said. Keep a copy of it.
Yes, I will. I'll share it with you. I've got it on my side. That was a kind of paraphrase, but it pretty much was what it.
Well, email it to me or something. I'd just love to see it. Something.
Yeah, thank you, Simon.
And as I understand it, Sarah, what you're saying is that's something that you've lived for quite a long time and continued to refine. Is that right?
Yeah. And so I look to do that in my interactions with others, and I look to do that in, you know, if I see an injured animal, I will always stop and I will always help. You know, that's how I live my life, from that place of looking to ease the suffering of anything and anybody that I come into contact with. And I don't feel that I need a religion to do that. That is my personal and moral code, and that is how I live my life and I make my meaning. And if I impart from this world, then I will, and I've lived by that code, then I feel that I will have created meaning within the life that I've been given.
And I'm guessing, but those of you with a living faith religious faith will tell me if I'm wrong, that the idea of I need to have this faith might not be the way that you'd express it, but rather that the reality is you do have this faith because that's your reality and your truth, and you could do no other. Is that fair?
But just thinking, one of the things I struggle with in terms of faith is the way it's sort of been formalized. You know, sometimes that's what I really struggle with. and you know, sometimes in terms of going to church, and if you're harangued by a preacher, and I think, for God's sake, man, we're all doing our best here, and it just doesn't feel, I find that really tricky. And I, you know, I like the idea of, you know, I always like the idea of being challenged and about behavior. And I mean, I loved what Sarah said, and I also liked what Chris said about the meaning of your life might be the impact on someone else. And it's a sort of a slightly different take on it, but I remember being, I love being in Scotland, and I remember being in Scotland and walking and being surrounded by the hills, and being in Inverness, which is a lovely, I love Inverness. And I remember thinking, thank God for my father, because he actually, it was his family that made this possible. And then I had my father's brother lived in Inverness. So that got me thinking about all of the people in my life that have done things that have impacted on me. And I suppose it was like a sense of gratitude, you know, in terms of what I got from my father, and just the way he was, and the connections he made with people, and how they all sort of fitted together. And I was thinking, well, what about mum? And then I just felt a real sense of sort of meaning of all that. It's almost like all the people that have been before me, or in my life now have been before me, and all the connections, and that life is just so big, and lots of people have had an impact on the way I live now and my experiences, and just been so grateful for that. So I suppose that, and I really like, you know, what you said, Simon, about, you know, when you think about the meaning of life, it's the meaning of a life, your life, my life. I think that's a really nice way to look at it. And it always grieves me when you go to funerals and you find out so much about somebody that I think, why didn't we know this when you were alive? You know, this is so lovely to know.